Welcome back, folks. It's episode 7 of the Disney Plus show Star Wars Skeleton Crew. This is our penultimate episode of our adventure.
Ooh.
But yeah, it's me and Hank back again. Wes is still in parts unknown, so.
Incognito.
Mm-hmm. Now, I don't think he's going to chime in tonight because I think he's got a previous engagement, but he did leave us with some of his ideas and notes, so
Perfect.
they are peppered through.
They won't be about starships or weapons because we know he doesn't know nothing about that.
Not at all. But before we dive in, I suppose we should set the tradition with one of those
bad Star Wars pirate jokes.
All right. Why couldn't the pirates play a game of sabacc?
Ooh. That is a good question.
Because Captain Brutus was standing on the deck.
With big wolf feet.
Yep. Covers the whole deck.
That's not bad, actually.
So, what are your opening thoughts on this particular episode?
So I liked it. I saw a lot, like not the details coming, but certainly we knew the heel turn was like coming in a big way. It's kind of like we thought pirates will get there first. I thought they might have to like stop some sort of invasion, like there might have been like a pitched fighter battle or something like that. But we're in the right ballpark. Pirates get there first. It's I guess it's all about getting through the barrier, which in hindsight makes sense because we've spent so much time making a big deal out of the barrier. We got some interesting things. It looks more like a gas giant than a barrier to me.
It really does.
And I have some questions. I couldn't get a clear like pause on it or not, and maybe you did in your slides. But it looks like so when they approach the thing, there's another planet off to the side. And it's lit up like there's a sun in the system, and so is the edge of the green bubble. But then when you're inside, spoilers, it looks like there might be a sun inside it too.
True.
So I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. But any nebula we've sort of seen in anything, and we haven't seen like nebula specific stuff in Star Wars. I guess the Kessel Run stuff from the Solo movies is the closest thing. They've always been this like gaseous mess, and our science teaches us if there's enough gravity involved in a gaseous mess, then gas giant. So neat stuff, a neat idea, and I quite enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun.
For sure. After seeing what we saw, and I do want to go back and watch like the previous episode where they go to Akron and see if there's like a failed ring of satellites around that planet.
Oh, right.
Just maybe because like they said, all 9 were hidden, right? But,
yeah, I feel like we passed by a defunct satellite on the way through that, but hard to say. I can't recall.
Yeah, I should have looked back before tonight, but something to do.
Or even on the way out.
True.
Of Atten the first time, because I mean these are things we weren't even really looking for.
But I suppose we should get into it.
Yeah.
So episode tonight is titled "We're Gonna Be in So Much Trouble." It originally aired January 7th, 2025. This one is again written by Christopher Ford and John Watts. Our director this episode is Lee Isaac Chung, who has now 2 dives into the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
Previously, he directed an episode in season 3 of The Mandalorian, and more recently, he directed the sequel to Twisters.
Oh,
so
I've not seen that yet.
It's not bad. It's got a couple subtle nods to the original, but it's not necessarily. You don't need to see the original to get this one.
Right.
But anyway. This episode here has a listed runtime of 37 minutes, but it actually comes in at 28 minutes and 20 seconds without the titles and credits. The synopsis reads, "Our heroes have never felt further from home."
Makes sense. The closer you get, the further you are.
True. So we open our episode back on Atten as the camera pans down towards the ground from the swirling green sky. A lizard-like creature can be seen climbing up one of the trees. And it's possible this could be a member of the Salamari species, but we'll get to them in a moment.
That's an awesome thought. We
Mhm.
said that in the chat. It sparked a whole wave of like,
Of what ifs and possibilities.
right.
But on the forest floor, we see flashing lights pointing towards a device on the ground. And as we get a closer view, we do find Mari, one of KB's moms, working feverishly on something. And she removes her welder's goggles and reaches as Farah hands her a chip, noting that barrier access codes are extremely hard to come by. She installs the chip and then notes that they still need the other part. And just then, Numa arrives out of the darkness with the last component. And as she hands it over, she questions if it will actually work. We hear an audible crash further off in the forest, and Wendell asks if anybody else heard it. KB's other mom, Gary, though, says it's probably just a tree sucker. Mary then completes the device, and as we hear another crash, this time causing Numa to turn, uh, she almost utters a legacy line with, "I have a bad," before she gets cut off and can't finish. But multiple lights flash on out in the distance, and a safety droid calls out, "Attention! You have an unauthorized communication device. Step away or you will be stunned." And all the parents, law abiding citizens, they all throw their hands up. But let's go back to that lizard for a second.
Yeah,
Uh, the Salamari, if I'm pronouncing that right, I hope,
I think
first
so.
appeared in the 1991 Timothy Zahn novel Heir to the Empire. They're described as a lizard like tree dweller native to the planet Mercure with a known ability to repel the force by creating a force neutral bubble. And when grouped together, they would expand their bubble, increasing their protection. It is noted that these creatures are very difficult to remove from the trees as they dig in with their claws to draw nourishment from whatever tree they happen to be on.
Hmm.
So, tree sucker would technically be an appropriate nickname.
That's an apt description.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Um, Action figure wise, fans have created versions of this lizard, and they're out there. But they are officially released in the Black Series, first with the Heir to the Empire Luke, and then again with the Grand Admiral Thrawn in the Hasbro 3-pack alongside Vader and General Grievous.
right.
So, a force neutral bubble around Ad-Atten wouldn't be a bad idea if you're trying to hide stuff.
No, absolutely. And I mean, we've seen species, uh, if they're brought with you to, as a colony, in a colony sort of fashion, especially Endor, where it just seems everything crashed there and then
Mm-hmm.
propagated. It's a great idea. I mean, when I first read Heir to the Empire, and it's I always impress upon people. It's We didn't have anything for so long, like a
Mm-hmm.
decade, and so all the fans were all in on this trilogy of novels, and what a wicked strong creative way to make a regular guy. I mean, like Thrawn's a super genius in terms of strategy and maybe even evil, but I even question defining him like that. But to level a playing field where
Mm-hmm.
uh, now he could ostensibly toe to toe with a Jedi, or at least be in the same room and not be subject to
Mind tricks.
their mind tricks, etc. It's a really great idea.
Mm-hmm. But back to the situation at hand here. Uh, Numa whispers that she's going to grab the device and run, but before she bends to grab it, a stun blast drops her to the ground. And Marie cites, "Oh, she'll be fine," and she grabs the device and calls for them all to run. The droid then tells them that they will be stunned for their own safety as the parents all rush off into the forest. And Mary is the next to fall to a stun bolt, but she passes the device to Gary, who continues to flee. And she, a couple minutes later, is stunned as well, then passing the device to Wendell. And he and Farah continue to run, only for him to soon fall after. Farah grabs the device and continues on, but the safety droids call out to her directly, so they know who she is, and they instruct her to put the communicator down. But she takes shelter behind a boulder as multiple safety droids give chase with lights mounted on their heads. As soon as the safety droids are past, though, Farah scrambles up an incline, and before placing the device on the ground to activate it, lights blink and glow, and the device begins to hover. And Farah, she starts guiding it upwards, and higher it rises, gaining speed and altitude until it disappears into the swirling green barrier above. And the screen cuts to black, and we get our show title card.
we dip in and out of Goonies
Iconography.
iconography
Yeah.
so much that sometimes we miss some of the other 80s movies references. And
Hmm.
this cold open is ET through and through.
Well, that was Wes's point here because he had a
Yeah.
thought because there are parallels
Just
between.
from the way it's lit to the flashlights cutting through the sort of the foggy environment,
Yeah,
the device itself.
it looks a hell of a lot different than the Speak and Spell one, but the same idea. Like
Oh,
he's another.
what it looks like to me is ET ship from the end.
Exactly. Yeah, the big Christmas ornament ship.
So I felt like the only thing really missing in this scene was the jangling keys.
Mm. But it is a nice tie because that is another fantastical '80s adventure film,
Yeah.
directed by Steven Spielberg, and it was also produced by Spielberg and Kathleen Kennedy.
Oh yeah, that's
So
true. That's true.
yet
She
another
had her
tie to it, right?
early days of the 80s. Everybody sort of swam in the same tank.
Hmm.
I have to, like a lot of accolades. I might have seen this movie 50 times in the theater when I was a kid. It was the other thing going on.
Yeah, this one scared the hell out of me when I was a kid.
Yeah, so I might even rank this as the best of the 80s kids movies that weren't absolutely Star Wars, but like
Sci-fi
that
adjacent.
feeling adjacent.
Yeah.
I would probably class ET as the best of the bunch.
And for all our viewers in Canada, if you want to check this one out, if you don't own it on DVD, you have until February 1st on Netflix to go watch ET because that is when they're pulling it.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So back here, we shift gears to hyperspace, where the newly emerged version of the Onyx Cinder glides through the spaceways. Inside the ship, a slap ball bounces through the corridor, followed by Neil and Fern, who gives the ball a slap. And Neil credits her shot as they make their way into the cockpit, where KB tells them the instruments say they're almost home. Neil calls out to Wim to let him know the good news as Fern joins Wim at the table, telling him she told him that she'd get him home. But he remains silent and hangs his head, causing Fern to ask, what's wrong? But Wim tells her nothing before getting up and heading to the cockpit. Fern follows and asks if he thinks they'll let them keep the ship, but he brushes her off with a somber, yeah, right.
It's nice to see the slap ball in live action. We've
It
seen
is.
in Rebels a couple times.
Yeah.
I think they even use it as a training game when the Ezra's undercover as a stormtrooper cadet.
Mm. It seems
Um,
like a safe game to play inside because it doesn't look like it's going to do a lot of damage. It just bounces
super
off
reminds
stuff,
me
right?
too. Like there's no hoops, but it reminds me, and Wes would know the exact name of the game, but the hovering ball game from Battlestar Galactica. It
Hmm.
reminds me of that too.
Nice. But Fern has a plan. She tells him that they could land out in the woods and hike back, saying that they were only lost the whole time. But Wim is having none of that and shuts her down. And looking out the window, he tells them once they get back, everything goes back to the way it was. And sighing, he notes that he still has to take the assessment. And looking downward, he mutters that he should never have pushed that green button in the first place. Fern disagrees, and Neil follows suit, saying that it was a real adventure. And even though half the time he was about to die, that's what real adventure is like. And Fern steps in behind Wim and tells him that she's glad he did it. And placing her hand on his shoulder, she tells him that everything will be fine.
It's funny, like she was there when his father was screaming for them to not fly
Yeah.
away in the ship. So the idea of parking it and maybe possibly even keeping it for themselves later,
Mm-hmm.
it's like I think said more to reassure him than any kind of like reality at all.
Yeah. There's no chance they're going to get to keep it. But Wim looks up to the passing lights of hyperspace, and Fern finishes with, "You'll see," before we wipe away to space. Then, out in the vastness of space, Brutus's pirate frigate drops out of hyperspace on approach to Ad-Atten. From the outside, which it looks like a giant green swirling gas giant of a planet,
Yeah.
with lightning strikes and plumes of gas exploding from its surface. Brutus strides across the bridge, and at first glance, he refers to it as a toxic maelstrom. And asking his chief navigator, Chelt, if they're in the correct location, she assures him we are. There's a little bit of Orabesh on her screen, flashing in red and white, and it just reads warning.
Nice.
So, the barrier is dangerous. Brutus grabs Jod and drags him to the front of the bridge, telling him this is that Atatin of yours? Doesn't look like a treasure planet to me. Any ship that goes in there will be destroyed. And giving Jod a final shove, he tells the crew, prep the airlock. The crew gives a cheer as two pirates march forward to toss out mad Captain Silvo. But in a lad's desperate attempt to save his own skin, he yells out, "How stupid are you, Brutus?" And that stops the pirate captain in his tracks. We get a silhouetted Brutus uttering a guttural growl, but Jod continues. And in almost a scolding tone, he tells Brutus, if you can't see it right in front of your face, it doesn't exist.
Mm.
Then, addressing the crew, he tells them it's a trick, noting that Atatin has been hidden for hundreds of years. Did they just expect it to be floating there for all to see? And insisting it's camouflaged, Brutus then questions if the crew, if this is what they came here for, more fables. And they all begin to grumble amongst themselves, but Jod has one last card to play. And he says, Tack Renard was here. And then instructing SM-33 to check the log, the droid hobbles forward on his peg leg, confirming that indeed, aye, according to Captain Renard, the real treasure planet be hidden inside the endless storm.
So I'm wondering if that, you know, it's been missing for a couple hundred years.
I think
Is
so.
our ballpark? Is that sort of dates Renaud
Back then.
back? Yeah, so it sort of puts us, and that's an interesting number. I know it's sort of a like, a couple hundred years ago, the War of 1812 happened,
Yeah.
but it's also around the time of the High Republic.
Yes.
And with so much stuff in flux in the great works,
Mm-hmm.
that we've been referring to as evident, I think that's another little tie into exactly when the events of
Tack Renard.
Renaud is, yeah, exactly.
I agree there 100% because, like we've speculated in the first one, like there's generations worth of growth over top of the ship, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it wouldn't be too hard if a transitional thing like from the Republic to the Empire, a old hidden secret just kind of gets lost in a file, right?
And we've seen droids live ostensibly. Like
Yes.
Hu Yang is an example of droids that can live hundreds, if not maybe thousands of years. And if he's not exaggerating, Hu Yang's been around for 25,000 years.
Mm-hmm. And like the droids on the Jack Black planet in the Mandalorian, right? In the
Right.
bar, they're like, we're gonna outlive all you humanoids,
Mm-hmm.
so we'll be here after you guys. Oops.
Mm-hmm.
But
Sorry.
all good. Back here though, with a smile on his face, Jod again points to the gas giant, relaying that Atatin is inside, and he would bet his life on it. Tells him, "Give me a fighter, and I'll fly in to confirm it." But Brutus steps in close, grabbing Jod by the shoulder, telling him he'll take that bet, but Jod isn't going anywhere. Brutus calls for a volunteer to fly into the storm, and the Quarren pirate Glurb answers. He strides across the flight deck to a snub fighter and then hops in and departs from the frigate. There is a possibility this could be the same one Vane escaped from back in the Mandalorian season 3, but if you look really close around the hangar, it seems like he's got a fleet of his own snub fighters, because it looks to be like at least 9 or 10 sitting on the deck there.
Right, right.
So maybe it's just like a pirate, Costco thing. Go there, get your snub fighters.
Right.
Fun little note though: the call sign on Glurb's helmet reads JJ
Okay.
in the August postcard font that's used at Galaxy's Edge.
Nice.
And the JJ could be a nod to JJ Abrams, or it could just be a nickname for the actor playing Glurb, like you said, the last episode, Jacob Rohan House.
Right.
So, either way, JJ.
Nice.
Glurb calls out that Ravager 1 is ready, Captain, but Brutus barks, "Get on with it." And the snub fighter disappears into the green swirling storm, and Glurb calls back that everything's fine. And Jod gives Brutus an "I told you so" type remark, but Glurb calls back that it's beginning to get choppy in there. And a few seconds later, we see bolts of lightning engulf the interior of the snub fighter before it explodes and the frigate loses contact.
They give you just enough to make Glurb like a likable character. Like he wants nothing more than to own an ocean and have a glowweed plantation.
Yeah.
And nobody's in piracy. They're in it to make a quick buck. They're not in it for like,
no,
unless you're Loopy.
Yeah.
You're not in it for life.
Yeah.
ostensibly.
Yeah.
It's a
Get
hard
your one
life.
big score, and
So you almost, it's a great way of going, let's humanize, for lack of a better term, let's humanize this alien and then
yeah,
take him from us. And I do have to say that the signal lost, it's flipped backwards because they're staring at the backside of the screen. But
true.
it might be the first Orabesh I ever went, oh, signal lost. And then realized, oh shit, I just read that.
Yeah, like you said there, it is typed backwards, but I think that's more for our benefit because it's not fully flipped backwards.
Right,
Only a couple characters are flipped
right.
fully, but anyway. Jod suggests that maybe they should send in another, but Brutus violently shoves him across the bridge to the waiting arms of those two other pirates, ready to shove him in the airlock. And Jod tries reasoning that it's a defensive grid, but Brutus is having none of it. Now sealed in the airlock, Jod calls for 33, but Brutus tells the crew it's time to dump the trash. A bald-headed pirate approaches the airlock, about to push the button, but again, Jod calls to 33 and asking, what Reynard said about passing through the storm. But Brutus has had enough, taking or enough talking, and bellows, "Airlock him!" But in a sterner tone, Jod tells them that if they airlock him, they'll be giving up the greatest treasure the galaxy has ever known.
Mm-hmm.
But Brutus, growing impatient, strides forward, barking to release the airlock, or they'll be joining him. And I love the snap cuts here because each time they go back to that bald buccaneer's finger, he's just a little bit closer to the button, increasing the tension each time.
Yeah, yeah.
But just as the button's about to be pressed, Chelt calls out, "Wait!" And everybody stops and turns, and Chelt relays that something's approaching. And Jod has his momentary reprieve. The Aurora Bresh on her screen here again reads warning, because, incoming ship. But Chalt tells them it's a ship coming out of hyperspace. And we cut outside the frigate to see the Onyx Cinder drop out of hyperspace on approach to Ad-Aton. And Brutus calls to see it, and a hologram appears. And you kind of need the descriptive audio and the subtitles, because amidst the murmurs and hushed talk, we actually do hear Vane call out, "Look at those old thermal vents. Don't make 'em like that no more." But 33 chimes in too with an "Aye, looks much different without its armor."
Mm.
Brutus dismisses it as an antique and calls to fire on the ship, but we see the wheels in Jod's mind turning as he starts repeatedly screaming, "I've got it," while banging on the window. Chalt slams the hand down on the release of the airlock and it slides open, and Jod steps out relieved, pointing at the Onyx Cinder, claiming the ship is the key. That is how we get to Ad-Aton. We cut to the bridge of the Onyx Cinder where the skeleton crew gaze out the window at the gas giant in front of them, and Fern remarks that this is what the barrier looks like from the outside. Neil notes this is why no one would ever want to go in. And just then, the cinder lurches with a jolt, sending all the kids off balance. Alarms start sounding, and from the outside of the cinder, we see it being pulled into the hangar bay of the frigate. KB relays that they're caught in a tractor beam, and Neil exclaims that we're dead meat. We're pirates' meat. Inside the hangar, the pirates march forward, Brutus telling Jod that this is his last life. Treasure or no, I'm going to kill you first chance I get. But confidently, Jod advises against it, noting, "The crew loves me." But he gives him a sideways glance here and says, "No, the crew loves plunder." But Jod, he doubles down, assured of the crew's love for him.
It's too bad they couldn't have pressed the emergency hull detonation sequencer there.
Yeah, really, eh? But the pirates all gather around as the boarding ramp of the Cinder lowers with steam venting out, and Brutus calls for anyone in there to come out unarmed, or we're coming in. Brutus begins to stride cautiously up the ramp, but calling out for them to surrender, and no one appears to be coming out. So he mutters, "Bunch of cowards," and then turns to face his crew. But out of nowhere, the lift claw shoots down and grabs him. He manages to get a couple shots off before the claw thrashes him up and down, forcing him to drop his blaster. And a digitized voice calls out from the ship, "Stay back, release the tractor beam, and we'll let him go." But Jod straightens up in an almost arrogant pose. Stepping forward, he turns to the pirate crew, assuring them, "Fear not, my friends." Aboard the ship, KB spots Jod moving up the ramp, and Wim asks, why isn't he back in the brig? But with a flick of his wrists, Jod's shackles snap open and fall to the ground. So that means he's been holding this whole time,
Yeah.
right? He's
Yeah.
waiting for his moment.
Yeah.
Now free, Jod picks up Brutus's fallen blaster as KB uses her augmented voice demanding they don't come any closer. Last warning, let us go or this guy's done for. Such a kid threat, right? He's done for. But Jod locks eyes with a confined Brutus who growls lowly and mutters, Silvo. Jod raises the blaster and without hesitation shoots Captain Brutus. The kids all jump back in shock at the sight, and the rest of the pirate crew all raise their blasters, most trained on Jod. But he turns to address them, and he begins. Brutus was a stinking, backstabbing mutineer. And then waving the blaster, he asks, any of you want to follow him? And most of them lower their weapons, including Kona. Jod approves and then orders her and the Grand Pirate Pax to seize the vessel, informing them that they'll find 4 scared children on board and to hold them as hostage. Jod then orders Gunter to fetch 33, while he instructs the rest of the crew to prepare the frigate to take Adaton. And this statement is met by cheers from the crew, directed at their newly crowned Mad Captain Silvo. The pirates rush off in all directions as the kids scamper further back inside to the interior of the Cinder, and Jod stares out the hangar at the green swirling gas giant, his prize now within his grasp. We cut away to find the communication device finally emerging from the barrier and fully intact. Inside the Onyx Cinder, the kids sit grimly around the galley table, guarded by Kona and Pax. And now in his battle mask, we saw originally back in episode 1, Jod strides towards the cockpit with 33 in tow, asking the droid to find out whatever mechanism allows the Cinder to pass through the barrier unharmed, then rip it out and install it in the frigate, noting that he does need the firepower in order to seize the Mint.
I just gotta say, like, we were talking in the like, just backstage, I guess, before the show, and I hadn't noticed before, and even now, I don't know if I can make this bigger on my own screen, but his mask looks so Darth Revan-y. Like it has qualities to it that may have led us to believe that there might have been a heel turn, but before we actually saw it coming. Just with Revan being that character that switches between allegiances, like I change underwear, which at least twice.
Yeah. But back on our ship, an alarm triggers, causing Jod to ask what it is on the comm. And we see the communication panel, and we get quite a bit of Orabesh here. From left to right, it reads Initiate DF, hyperspace launch and calibration, hyperdrive, incoming encryption, and in a nod to Star Trek, the upper right text on the screen reads warp drive.
I thought that was crazy.
Yeah.
That was funny. Should we catch up with some of the chat? I had completely forgotten.
Oh my
and then
God,
I looked over and there's 39. I don't want to get too bogged down in it, but Gaz is here.
Wes here too.
Yeah, Wes is here. There you go. See, we
Triad. There you go.
Yeah, that's it. Awesome. Thank you. Doug's in.
Nice.
Josh is here too. Better. Why no one stumbled upon the planet previously? Yeah, right. That it makes a lot more sense.
Fly by and not want to go right in, right?
Joe Pan, Josh, what's up, buddy? Sorry about us on the comments.
It's always something, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Brogo's here too.
Oh wow. Hey, Brogu, what's up? And now Wes is also
He's coming in under 2 accounts. Yeah.
Yeah. Are any of these coming through?
Yeah, they're coming through. We're just
sorry, Wes.
Technical foul.
We forgot that button. We were in the zone so deep that we were like, forget the fans. Well, let's get caught back up, Joe. They're all just chatting amongst themselves. Sending good vibes to you. Yeah. Okay, I think we're caught up, and we'll get better at that.
We'll keep watching now. I'll turn my head more. But yeah, in the cockpit, Jod taps the screen, and a hologram pops up in the middle of the room, and we hear a message from Farah telling the children that they've sent this message out on a communication buoy, hoping they'll hear it. Farah continues, just know that we love you so, so much. And Kona leaves her guard post and enters the cockpit. Farah then tells Fern, I know how much you worry, but you're not in trouble. You're going to make it home, and this message will tell you how. The message then changes to KB's parents. Their message: KB, my sweet girl, don't give up, no matter what. We know you must be scared to go so long without maintenance to help you keep dry. Which is kind of weird, but that kind of doubled down and reinforces why she wouldn't want to go into the steam baths back on Lanupa.
Right, right.
But the kids move in closer to listen, but Pax blocks them. And he speaks to them in Huttese, but Fern tells them they're not trying to escape, they just want to hear. But in response, Pax raises his very long knife menacingly. KB's parents continue, and you shouldn't have too many malfunctions. Get home safe to good old At-Atten, where you belong. Pax then enters the cockpit as well, and Neil's parents appear, telling them he can make it home. Numa goes on to tell him that his baby brother lost a tooth and got a shiny new datary, but he said all he wanted was his big brother. Neil gives us a tear-filled look. And it's kind of neat because we actually see Neil's father in this,
Right, yeah.
Noel. And I believe this is only the second time we've seen him because he's not participating in like the communication buoy operation or anything of the like. But
It's funny to see a little bit of real world uh, monetary. Like your brother's going to lose a tooth, so we gave him a
yeah,
datary,
yeah,
and here's a handful of dataries for your lunch money. But you step outside the barrier, and suddenly you're like, "What are you doing with $1 million, kid?"
yeah,
you
exactly.
know,
We slipped a quarter under his pillow, but it's really worth this much.
it's right, right. Spanish doubloon.
The hologram again switches back to Farah, who tells them they can't transmit the coordinates to the planet for security procedures, but urges them to try and find a Republic emissary. Wim's the father then appears, telling them that a Republic emissary is someone official who knows the location and how to get through the barrier. He continues telling them to be careful, the barrier can be dangerous. And in the worst time message ever, he tells them, don't tell anyone where you're from. And with that, Jod looks back at the kids and says, oops. Wendell tells them that he wishes they could say more, but you weren't supposed to find out about any of this until you graduate. Then, speaking directly to Wim, he apologizes for not listening to him, pleading with him to come home. Quietly, Wim tells the others that they need to take the ship back, and Fern says they need a plan. She suggests they trick Jod as they know he's greedy. Before she can get out another word, though, Wim cries out, attack! And he rushes
Leroy
in.
Jenkins.
Yep. Only to be immediately stopped by Pax. The kids follow suit, though, and Wim escapes, only to be grabbed by Kona. And then Pax then pulls his blade again, stopping the kids short. Jod smugly tells them it's always best to have a hostage, then tells the pirates to chain them up. Kona affirms with an aye, Captain Silvo, but Wim lets loose a kid tirade. I don't care how many fake names you have, because we know that you're a liar, and this is our ship because we found it first. Brogu coming in here. Neil's family is wonderful. It's a really great example of how families should be today.
Nice.
For sure. I am curious, though, as to what Neil's father's position is.
Yeah.
Because, like, we've gotten jobs for everyone else except
Mm-hmm.
him. And back on at Akron, there was that statue, right?
Right.
Of
But isn't there a statue of his species?
yeah, like a warrior type species,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I'm curious if maybe he's part of a security force on At-Atten,
Wes is saying, does that mean they have the Tooth Fairy in Star Wars?
or it could be the Tusk Fairy.
The Tusk Fairy, and that, I mean, that's the Easter Bunny, Jack's the Easter Bunny,
Cool.
and perhaps Santa Claus too. So
Yeah. Somewhere out in the galaxy, everybody's there. But coldly, Jod looks at Wim and he tells him, well, it's now mine. And out of nowhere, 33 announces, actually, since you're currently captain of the frigate, this vessel remains unattested. Jod questions this, but 33 tells him, by the pirate code, a captain can lay claim to one vessel and only one. And then Wim, he stutters to claim it, but Jod rushes and covers his mouth, claiming it for himself. And he insists that they take orders from him. But Fern bursts out, I call unclaimsies. And Jod spins around shocked. But she again says, I call unclaimsies and claim it for kids only. And then she instructs 33 to get the pirates off their ship. And 33, he pauses a moment, and Jod turns and tells her it doesn't work that way. But without a
Yeah.
word, 33 punches Jod right in the face,
I
smashing
laughed
that
so loud.
visor and knocking him out. It's like, oh, yes. But 33 says it's close enough, and raising
That's
his
that.
forearm shields, Kona and Pax open fire, but he puts his head down and just bulls forward. Then we get a snap cut, and we see all three pirates laid out on the hangar floor. But Jod comes to, and he removes his helmet as the Onyx Cinder begins to lift off. He utters, "No, no!" as the lights of the ship illuminate his face, his treasure aspirations seemingly slipping through his fingers. He scrambles to his feet, and we cut to the cockpit of the Cinder where Captain Fern joyously tells 33 to get them home. And he confirms with an "Aye, Captain Fern. It would be my honor." And super fast, he just briskly goes through all the switches and engages the controls and throttles the ship out. And the kids all embrace, knowing that they are almost home. On the frigate hangar deck, a handful of pirates rush in and open fire on the ship with little effect. But seeing the ship fly out of the hangar, Gunter desperately tries to raise Jod on the comms, asking why he sent out the Onyx Cinder. But Vane shoves Gunter aside, saying, "Send fighters out. The Cinder is the key." But, and again, here we get a really good view of at least 9 extra snub fighters still
Right.
waiting on the hangar floor.
Yeah, that's a pretty decent contingent.
Yeah, so
I mean, they refer to the ship as the frigate a few times, so it's got a pretty good. You know what I really like about this scene is the fact that their bureaucracy keeps kind of like shutting them down, and then it's almost as good as like child play bureaucracy.
really
like,
is.
No touchbacks.
Yeah. Wes says, "I love how the pirate code is literally as loose as schoolyard rules."
Right, exactly. Very well said. That's exactly what I was trying to say. Good.
Yeah. But the two ships lift off from the hangar deck in pursuit, and the Onyx Cinder has already reached the barrier and plunges into the swirling green mass. Inside the storm, we finally see the source of the glowing red dots patterned across the skies of Ad-Atten, and they're giant satellites with bolts of lightning shooting out across the sky.
Mm.
The two pirate fighters zoom up right on the tail of the Cinder. As 33 guides the ship onward, the kids peer out the window at the storm surrounding them, and they nearly miss getting struck by one of those bolts of lightning as they pass by another satellite. One of the snub fighters pulls up alongside them and begins to bellow at them over the comms to turn the ship around. But before he can get any further, the ship is caught by another arc of lightning and explodes. The kids all scream, and 33 calmly notes, "It appears the defensive grid is still active." Neil questions if they'll be safe, and 33 confirms it. "Aye, that was Captain Rennett's genius, stealing one of the Mint's own ships so he could fly it safely back through."
What a ship to like, you know what I mean? Just to be, and we kind of glanced over this. We talked about it a bit in the chat, but we've always had this question of, are the people aware? Like, how much time has passed? How much time has passed for them? Are the adults or the planet officials aware of the state of the galaxy? And I sort of like firmly believe now that even the adults are
In the dark.
in the dark, that don't know that we've had a galactic civil war and we've come full circle to a new republic.
Mm-hmm.
And my logic being, and I put this in the chat, was that then they would have switched to Imperial credits, and then they would have switched to New Republic credits, which we've seen both of in live action now. So it really starts to tug on my brain a lot. Like during the approach to the Galactic Civil War, so the waning days of the Republic, which is like, we've probably been with them saying about 200 years since the Renaud crash. I mean, that could be just the outside world looking in, right? But you start to go, that ship looks a lot like Darth Maul's scimitar, like or other Sith ships we've seen, and could that have been Palpatine, like emissaries from that era of the Republic, picking up, cash to fund the war?
It could be.
And like, there's no indication as to like how often they pick these things up, and would the average person know that it's like, because they do like everybody inside, clear the city. There's an
Yeah,
emissary coming. Like they announce it over loudspeaker. So it's possible that that none of
that they
these
think,
adults have seen an emissary in their lifetime.
yeah. And another point to add in there, Farah, when she sends out the message, she tells them to look for a Republic emissary, not a New
Right.
Republic.
Right.
So,
And it just seems like that's the idea, like that it's such a mystery because it's literally been forgotten. Anybody in the New Republic, if there was some crossover, maybe Mon Mothma, like Wes has a point, and we'll
mhm,
get to it when it pops up, but it seems like it's been lost for a long time, like generations.
long enough to fall into fable. But
Wes has a very deadly game of red light, green light, which is against schoolyard stuff. That's quite
exactly.
great, was Doug saying. The fact that they were surprised that the ground was opening shows that they don't pick up very often. Exactly.
True.
That's my point too. Like I said, maybe not even during these two generations of people
Exactly.
we've seen.
Yeah. But back here, passing by another satellite, lightning arcs out from it, destroying the other snub fighter in the process. And KB assumes that they could get hit at any moment. But Fern tells 33, keep going, as they come ever closer to another satellite generating a wild array of lightning bolts. But as they pass by, the red lights shift to green, and the electricity stops arcing. Neil cries out, yes, it worked! We're alive! But Wim clues in to what 33 said earlier. The Onyx Cinder isn't a pirate ship, it's an At-Atan ship. And the clouds, they start to thin and give way, and soon their home planet of At-Atan comes into view. And as they draw nearer, a bright light from a distant sun cuts through the storm and washes over the ship and the crew as they stand there in awe of the sight in front of them, including the bilge rat who pokes out a 33's eye socket. Wim questions if this is actually it, and KB notes, oh, how big the planet looks from up here. And Fern quietly says, we made it. The controls begin to shake and jerk, and they pop out of 33's grasp, and he tells them, oh, we've been locked into an autopilot landing sequence. And Neil is quick to point out that the same thing happened on Hana's planet of Ad Akron. Fern looks back at the other kids and says, my mom totally lied on that call. We're going to be in so much trouble, but I don't care about even more or
He was
anymore.
easily able to override it and take manual control last time. Do you think
He
there's
was.
a reason that they're not doing that this time?
I think it's an official autopilot to guide them in. And since
Mm.
this is where they're trying to go, he's
Yeah,
not
I
going to
guess.
fight it this time, right?
Yeah,
Because the other time they weren't fully sure.
that's true.
Yeah. So, and once again, we get our show title embedded in the talk of the show, continuing their streak.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but from behind them, Jod slyly says that they should care, shattering the moment and causing Wim and the others to spin around in shock. 33 spins around and leaps out of the pilot's seat with a well, 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 back again, are we? And marching right at Jod, telling the kids, stay where they are, he'll handle it. But Jod steps forward as well and pulls out a lightsaber taken from Renaud's lair. And in less than an elegant swing, he severs the droid's head, causing 33 to fall in a heap.
It's like a baseball swing.
It really is. There's nothing elegant to his motions here.
I'm not sure what they're smoking on YouTube channels out there, but
I know. Like, this is not any
saying
of
that
the
he's
6 forms.
yeah, it's claiming that it's the same style as Mace Windu, and then making a leap that Mace Windu was the same style as oh my gosh, Pon Krell, and that Pon Krell was the apprentice of Mace Windu. They just come right off the rails. We'll just make stuff up now.
Yeah, because the way he's
Yoda
waving
and
that thing
Leia.
around, no.
Yeah, no, it's like almost zero skill. Like I think I put in the chat, he wields it like Han Solo might.
Yeah.
To open a tauntaun.
Yeah, Finn had more skill with it when he picked it up.
Yeah. The idea chills me a little bit in the Skynest sense, because who's maintaining all the infrastructure on At-Atan if not the droids? Well, yeah, I mean, if there's no human being pulling the strings, if there's no being, I guess stop saying human, but pulling the strings, then certainly it's a droid of some renown, if not just something embedded. Well, I mean, that could be true as I'm thinking. It could be just programming that.
Exactly. Like, oh, here's your last directive. You follow this until
Right.
the emissary gets here. And a droid would think nothing of time passage, right?
And I mean, they don't ask for credentials. The credentials are the fact that you have the ship. So
Yeah.
it makes sense that Renaud would have stolen this ship at some point, and maybe even others in the past have tried this very same tactic.
Mm-hmm. But on the bridge, Jod calmly tells the kids to get down, but they stand frozen in shock. And then he screams at them, get down on the ground. And Neil snaps out of it first, dropping to the ground in compliance, the others following suit. He tells them keep their heads down, no talking. And all four kids hang their heads, sitting silently on the floor. Wes says, no!
Yeah, I was pretty upset. I mean,
It's
we've seen them put 3PO's head back on, but
and that's a point I'm going to come back to later on because he did just take out a droid,
mm,
right? We can fix droids. So
that's true. That's true.
so I've got hope. But it really is like an upset adult moment. Like the kids aren't listening, so he screams at them. So Jod steps forward over the fallen body of 33 as the bilge rat leaps from the droid's severed head. And Jod kicks the little critter away and stalks to the communication array while staring menacingly at the kids who
I
glare back
started
at him.
thinking, could the little rat be Renaud? You know, I started thinking crazy stuff as I'm watching the show.
Nice. But he deactivates the lightsaber and hits the transmitter and begins, "This is Captain Silvo. I'm on board the Onyx Cinder. We made it through, and Atten is on the inside exactly like I told you. Come in?" But there's no response, only static, as the barrier prevents his transmission from reaching the outside. The Orabesh on the screen here has changed since we last looked, and this time it reads terminal. And KB tells him, as such, that, the barrier's blocking it. But he angrily says he knows and takes the pilot seat, trying to take control. But the controls are still engaged. Neil tries to tell him about the autopilot, but enraged, he spins around crying out, "Shut up!" And directing his anger at Neil, he tells the young boy, "Your incessant, unending jabber, jabber, jabber. Honestly, it's unbearable." And we do see a little bit of sadness roll across Neil's face, but a teary eyed Wim yells out at Jod, "Leave him alone."
Mm.
And, there's that, the fighting spirit, right?
This is the Hook moment,
It
right? Like
is.
he's completely, you know, uh, leaning into the Hook character almost, like
Yeah.
the shut up children, and
Yes.
yeah, absolutely.
But he leaps from the seat and Jod admonishes them that not just Neil, but all of them. And then singling out Wim, he tells the boy he's the worst one. A tear slips down his cheek and Jod mocks him, calling him a poor, poor boy. Fern is staring daggers at Jod, who takes notice and jeeringly quips, "What?" But Fern, she almost speaks, but stops herself. And then he berates the kids, telling them they're all weak, sheltered, spoiled children. And like any adult who's had to deal with rowdy children, he tells them he has a terrible headache and zero patience left. He implores them to be quiet and give him a chance to think. Formulating his plan, he tells them, be quiet and follow his lead. And if any of them are thinking otherwise, he reignites the saber, shining it and swinging it around in front of the kids. And again, he's swinging it like, "Ooh, look what I got."
You're right, right,
Like, there's
yeah,
no, it's threatening, but it's not to your neck
yeah,
threatening.
yeah. He's not doing an Obiani.
No, but it's,
Fern, though, this little actress, man,
oh,
she's amazing me all the time. I don't want to make her mad ever.
no.
Look at those daggers. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what they
She,
told her to get her that
she's
mad
waiting
at.
for her moment too, though, right?
He just kicked your dog backstage.
Oh, Wes got a point. Still, no one has referentially referred to Snowball. This is true. It's only on the databank.
No, it's true. It's funny.
But
Captain Snowball.
because his furry is white. Uh, he then tells them he enjoyed seeing their parents' faces earlier, as now he knows who to carve up if they get out of line. And Fern locks eyes with him, and he nods at her, noting, "I'll do it," following through with his threats if they don't behave. Silence then falls over the cockpit, and Jod retracts the blade of the saber and silently looks out the window. And that moment right there is another one of those schoolyard ones, like, "I'll do it,"
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But we wipe away to another scene, and a door slides open to reveal the group of parents now sequestered in Farah's office. A security droid enters, telling them that they are all in violation of AT-AT and security protocols, and asks why they released a communication device through the barrier. Wendell is first to respond, saying that they were left with no choice, and Numa goes next, citing that they did what they had to for their children. KB's mom, Mary, tells the droid that the problem is droids don't listen. And the droid begins to respond, "We're always available for standby." And he raises his camera like head, and the droid turns and exits the room. Behind him, we get a good look at the mural on the wall, which the descriptive audio describes as mythologizing the Mint. So
it does look like a ship is coming down to land and what's about to happen now that I look at it. And all the people around are like, worshiping the event.
Mm-hmm. Wendell suddenly questions what that was about, but a tone comes across the speaker system. And Wes says,
Oh, I shut it off on you. Sorry.
Go.
Go.
Good. Once again, Jude Law proves how well he can do a D-bag. Yes, he does. Yes,
it's
he
Shakespearean.
does.
You got to be able to swing both ways when you do in Shakespeare.
Yep. A voice booms over the system. "Attention, AT-ATN. This is the supervisor speaking. An emissary is arriving for a shipment." And Farah is shocked at hearing the actual voice of the supervisor, reinforcing how rare these visits from the outside world have become.
Mm.
The voice continues, "All non-essential work is suspended until offload is complete. Thank you, that is all." But the device on Gary's wrist starts beeping, indicating proximity to KB, which she excitedly shows to Marie, and the two moms turn to the window and spot the Onyx Cinder on approach. Outside, we get an aerial view of the city as the ship approaches, and KB's mothers rush off, and we can see the residents outside staring up at this landing craft. Like you said, this is an event. Like, chances are none of them have seen it before.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's like, oh my God, what is that?
It's completely automated too. It's like when this ship triggers the sensor, it sets into the programming into motion, and all these things happen.
Yeah. But the ground begins to shift beneath their feet, and a large circular landing pad begins to rise out of the ground. Panels on the lawn tilting upwards, causing some of the residents to tumble down, even though the security droids are trying to usher them away as quickly as possible. From our aerial perspective, we see that the landing pad is heavily guarded with at least 3 levels of platforms raising up to reveal the circular pad beneath. Now, our voice of the supervisor, if it sounds familiar... Oh, hold on, we want one here. Is this Farah's office? I got the impression that we were physically closer to the supervisor. Descriptive audio guy says it's Farah's office, so that's what I'm going with.
Yeah, they've been wrong before, but it looks enough like.
Yeah. But our supervisor, if his voice sounds familiar, it should, because it's actually Stephen Fry. You'll know his voice from previous narration on films like The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, children's shows like Pocoyo. He played Manny Faces on the Netflix He-Man and the Masters of the Universe show, and he was the Master of Lake Town in The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug. Also, he's the narrator on the audiobooks for Harry Potter, so he's out there.
He was just knighted, wasn't he?
I think so.
I think he was just knighted.
But, yeah, back here as the cinder touches down, the landing gear gets locked into place with a series of clamps, and we get the majestic shot of it against the rising sun of AT-ATN. Jod strolls down the ramp with the kids in tow, and then turning and facing them, he folds his long coat back just enough to reveal the lightsaber hanging from his belt in a threatening gesture. The kids remain silent as the safety droid approaches, asking if Jod is the visiting Republic emissary, to which he instantly confirms, "Yep, that's me." Pointing at the kids, he tells the droid that these 4 waifs he found along the way, and the droid drops into his line about travel outside the barrier being prohibited before turning his attention back to Jod.
Are you really the quickie mart guru?
Of course I am.
Like, that's all this high security, and then it's just like, so are you the guy? Oh,
you must be the guy. You got the ship, right?
Well, yeah, no problem.
But it continues that due to planetary protocol, any emissary must proceed directly to the Mint and begin the offload procedure, which Jod agrees to, but then he asks about contacting his ship outside the barrier, and the kids all exchange a worried look. The droid ignores his request and tells them that they will proceed to the Mint, and the platform shakes and begins to descend back underground.
So you think that would be a flag?
You would think so.
You brought a ship to just outside the barrier? What were you thinking?
Yeah, why would you bring something out here that would give us away?
So this is so deep in their uh, programming that they're not even looking at that. They're not
Yeah.
even, when he starts to bathe in the in the credits, they don't.
Oh,
That doesn't seem to bother them at all.
yeah. Wes says, good enough for me. But the ship dips below the visible line of the opening, and Wendell pushes his way through the crowd to get to the front. The other parent's close behind him. He calls out to Wim, but gets no answer. And on the platform, we see Wim and the others looking upward as the landing pad sinks further and further down. The security droid notes that these children have been reported missing. Maybe the droids do listen,
Yeah.
because they recognize them, right? But the droid notes that the parents will be contacted immediately, and Jod suggests that the kids be held on the ship for safety.
So they are thinking outside this programming then, so that
Yeah.
it makes them not questioning other things very strange.
Mm-hmm. Um, the droids agree, and they usher the kids back aboard. And the trip down is long. We hear
Hmm.
lots of metallic clanking as the descent continues, and eventually a wall gives way to reveal a large cavern with machinery and hover carts bustling about. Mechanical arms feed into a machine at the center of the cavern, emitting a golden glow. And there's various glints of gold embedded in the walls. So there's a very good chance these are the mines Fern was joking about back in
Or,
episode
or
one.
or at least sort of like sparking the rumors that would have a child think that there were minds like that for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Jod notes it's quite the operation that they're running here, and the droid responds that they'd hoped he would be pleased. Once again, Jod tries to persuade the droids to allow him to contact his ship outside the barrier, but the droid retorts that communication outside the barrier is not permitted. Wes says, the offload, what would they be offloading? That's a good question, too. Because, like, would they be coming in trading something for all these credits? Or like in Lord of the Rings, would they be doing the barrel system where they're sending all the empties back?
Well, proceeding to the offload, I guess, has to be referring to them offloading the stuff from the planet onto a ship, but you would think they would then refer to it as proceed to the loading.
Yeah, but
Hmm.
yeah, I'm hoping we'll get more on that next episode. But frustratedly, Jod tries to pull rank, noting as emissary he must have open communication with his other ship, and the droid tells him that he must speak with the supervisor regarding this matter. So Jod reluctantly agrees, citing that it would be better than dealing with a droid. He then shoos the droid to go fetch the supervisor, as well as some of their finest refreshments. A klaxon sounds, causing Jod to look up, and the droid informs him that they're arriving at the vaults as the platform spins around facing a giant circular door. A lock mechanism begins to unlatch on the door, coupled with the echoing metallic knocks, giving emphasis to its massive size.
Hmm.
A bridge extends across to the platform and locks into place as the gigantic door begins to slide open. And Jod doesn't hesitate. He steps forward as the kids watch on from the ramp of the cinder with concern. But Jod continues to stride forward as a golden glow begins to illuminate the bridge. He asks the droid how many vaults they have like this one as the camera begins to pan around and we see just how vast this one vault is. The droid responds that they have 1,139 vaults in total. And that's a nice little nod there
Hmm.
to another George Lucas product, being that this one vault means that they have 1,138 others, which
Nice.
is part of the title for the 1971 film THX 1138, about another futuristic society which is extensively controlled, where people don't have names but designations.
Awesome.
That
Nice
one's
grab.
written and directed by, I should say, or at least co-written, George Lucas,
He
and it
made
stars Robert Duvall in the title
he made
role
he made it twice. It was a college film. It was his college film, and then he sort of remade it with Robert Duvall and
with a budget.
with a budget. Yeah.
Mm. But
I like the when we finally get the size of the room,
mm-hmm.
and for me it's a Raiders of the Lost Ark nod, but inverted. And what I mean by that is, it instead of the golden box of the Ark of the Covenant encased in a box that looks so similar, now we're like crates of gold. So it's like the Ark revealed, but
Mm-hmm.
there's so many arcs that
Yeah.
just grab one if you want.
Wes says the terminology doesn't make sense if we're taking credits from the mint somewhere else. True. But Jod continues forward into the vault, and he's awestruck at the overwhelming amount of newly minted Republic credits, stacked floor to ceiling.
There you go.
And he approaches one pallet of credits with the glint of gold shining across his face the same way it did for Indiana Jones when he beheld the idol.
Mm-hmm.
Tears well up in his eyes as he stares at the treasure every pirate has searched for the last few hundred years. And he plucks a single credit from the pallet, causing the cascade of the rest to fall down, and he begins to laugh. Cupping his hands, he drops to his knees, and he lets the credits spill over him while laughing more maniacally now. Meanwhile, the kids sitting on the waiting ship ramp, they jump up at the sound of an approaching hover cart. And to their surprise, their parents have arrived, with the exception of Neil's father, uh, who did appear in the holo message, but apparently wasn't part of the scheme to send out
Right.
the message.
Right.
So the kids, they all rush down the ramp, and the parents rush forward to embrace their children. We get a whole bunch of snap cuts between parents here as each set pair off, uh, hugging and, like really hugging in to their kids,
Mm-hmm.
except for Wendell and Wim, who stop for only a moment before Wendell scoops him up and gives him a tight hug. He sets Wim down, but Wim jumps in close for another hug.
Mm.
And our heartfelt reunion continues for another couple moments before some lone footsteps approach, and we see Jod standing opposite them on the ramp. Farah tells Fern that she was so worried, but Fern is the first to notice the mad Captain Silvo standing there, and a worried expression crosses her face. Jod gives her the subtlest of smiles, then ignites his lightsaber as he steps closer to the children and their parents. And we cut to black.
Crazy.
Oh, what a way to leave it. So,
we do have a little Revenge of the Sith nod there, like that little
bit.
shot
Mm-hmm.
of the holding the lightsaber out and
Like
threatening
your
the
innocent
people.
ones about to be cut down.
Yeah. I know Wes has concerns about whether Jod can be redeemed or not, and I am in the camp that I like my villains to be villains, and I'm sort of tired of bad guys getting good guy in the end. It's become tropey, almost on top of the old trope of the good guy becoming a bad guy due to circumstances. But I don't really find anything that he did here irredeemable.
Unforgivable, yeah.
No, I mean, pirate captain going to kill another pirate captain. That makes sense.
Yeah.
He's never really lied to them bull-faced. It's always been
half truths and from a certain point of view.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And we all thought the payroll from Andor looked like a lot of money. True.
Well, this is, and when you think about that, so this is bankrolling the galaxy.
Yeah. And there's supposed to be 8 other planets that had this same thing going on.
But I mean, were they the same thing? Were they bankrolling different? Like, is one bankrolling, I don't know, fresh water? Is one bankrolling, seeds, or or are there 9 planets full of 1138 vaults each of endless credits? The galaxy is a big place. There are trillions of beings in the galaxy, and you're funding everything from Jawas scrapping metal to building planet destroying super weapons. So, but you got to wonder if what intrinsic value something of that, when the not to get political or anything, but when certain powers that be started printing money in the 40s to get out of economic, or 30s to get out of economic debt, the price of bread became worth $1,000 or
yeah.
So you got to wonder, like, does too big an influx of this, like is it absolutely treasure, or is he going to be like
shifting the balance of economic power?
Right. So at first it would be treasure, but then when there's so much of it, the scarcity being gone,
yeah,
does it shift the balance,
diminish the value? Yeah. But we do have a preview for next week, thanks to the Disney Media Kit. It shows Wim, Neil, KB, and Wendell racing somewhere on hoverbikes. How this scene will factor in, I don't know. But this is the only piece of the media kit we have not seen materialize yet in the show. So
nice.
We will find out next week in the finale. Further, Wes had some thoughts about predictions. The supervisor. Will it turn out to be human? Will it be a droid? Will it be Tack Renard?
Yeah, I
Because on Ad Akron, it's a very much human statue that is like desecrated.
I
But
mean, well, yeah, but it could be, yeah. I mean, it could be. Well, that's a really good question. That is a really good question. I
I,
tend to think that maybe that it's a physical being, like that is doing some of the administration, but that they're really just, sort of like our politics, where you're just a figurehead to the machine,
mm-hmm.
and the machine is a metaphor for political systems, but they're the machine being literal.
Yeah,
So uh,
I'm
it's
putting my
it's
money on droid.
conceivable that could be all three at one time.
That's cool. I'm kind of banking on being droid though,
I
blindly
I do,
following
that's
rules for
kind of the
hundreds of
camp I
years.
sort of sit in.
Yeah. Hey, Zazel's here.
What up, man?
And then Wes says, bankrolling the great works. Yes.
I mean,
And that's what it would be,
like
right?
everything from like the speeder's not what worth what it used to be to
Mm-hmm.
to a stormtrooper's visor,
Yeah.
or that's why I guess my question is, if you do value the money, like the how much this is worth, like is it, can you still build a, a fleet on Exegol? Are you like, that's the kind of
Mm,
money that would do that.
really is, yeah.
Right.
Circling back to the redemption of Jod, um, aka Mad Captain Silvo, aka Crimson Jack, aka Dash Zenton, aka Professor Gorlox, aka Jodwick Zank, and now aka the Emissary.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, I think he does have some redemption in him. Um,
Yeah, I don't think he did anything. Like, I threaten people's parents on a daily basis, and I don't even know if they have kids. I just
Wes
don't think he,
Wes saying here, I honestly thought Crosshair was going to be redeemed posthumously.
right. So, and I mean, a lot of us were in that camp. So
Mm-hmm.
and I don't find anything that Jaw did that's even close um, to what Crosshair did. Like
Mm-hmm.
Crosshair is basically stepping on the necks of family,
Yeah,
trying to kill blood, and Jaw's never been anything but sort of what he.
he's a scoundrel.
Right, so he's going to let you think what you think about him. He's not doing anything that's out of character for him, and I would say that's what kind of gives him the redeemable, like a re-redeemable quality. And let's face it, at the end of the day, if we're in a galaxy where Anakin Skywalker can chop up a bunch of little kids and then go on and like blow up planets willy nilly and subjugate, like, and then go, it's okay, I killed the Emperor.
Yeah.
I think everybody in this galaxy is redeemable, based on that.
Mm-hmm. Wes says the fact that Renard's hologram was green suggests to him more that ignore the man behind the curtain type thing.
I get that too. There's
True.
so many little nods to the, you know,
To
uh,
other
right,
projects
and
and
that's the
whatnot.
one thing I'd said early on, is that the one thing that made Star Wars really great is that you're doing big myth,
Mm-hmm.
with Star Wars. You're doing even like less big than like uh, oh my goodness, the Iliad or the Odyssey,
Mm.
but even the Anakin Spall, the second trilogy, the prequel trilogy, is basically Othello.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're drawing from fantasy that's like even closer to our generation. You're drawing from Peter Pan. You're drawing from like '80s movies, which are a whole. You could group them as like this sort of fantasy genre.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that some of the other Star Wars projects really didn't bother to like dip into what makes like the mythology awesome, and then like borrowing from that. It's like they're borrowing from themselves, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that we reached outside that with this show to get some of these places.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. I did put together a small list of Jod moments here, though.
Okay.
Uh, as far as irredeemable, he's constantly lying. We know that.
Hmm.
He beheaded 33.
Hmm.
He made the kids cry.
Oh well, yeah,
on purpose,
yeah.
and then threatening to slice and dice their parents.
Mm.
But redeemable moments, he did help them escape Port Borgo.
Hmm.
He tried to comfort Wim on the ship when Wim was feeling down. He tried to warn Wim when he picked up that lightsaber instead of, him trying to cut his foot off.
Yeah, yeah.
He didn't kill Fern when taking control of the Onyx Cinder
Nope.
because that would have been super easy for him to do. He elected to keep the kids as hostages when the pirates recaptured the Onyx Cinder rather than kill them.
Hmm.
And when threatening the kids' parents, like I said, he had to reiterate, I'll do it. Like, they don't believe him.
Right, right.
And when taking over the ship a third time, he kicked Snowball out of the way rather than stomp that bilge rat in front of the kids to make an example.
Well, that's
Like, here's this low little life creature that should have no value to him whatsoever.
he just kind of shoves them to the side.
Yeah. Like, remember in the Green Mile when Mr. Jingles goes running out in the hallway and
Mm,
Percy just stomps on him to set an example?
right.
He could have done that here, but he didn't. So, I think he's redeemable.
And I mean, it's looking very much like they're going to get a second season if their numbers
I really hope so.
and so I don't know if the show works without him. There's a lot of the dynamic there that like even the heel turn dynamic works.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of fun to know. Like you're halfway through Return of the Jedi and you still don't know whether you could trust Lando Calrissian,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, and I mean, yeah, well, I mean, Han Solo shot a guy in the face or the chest or whatever in the
Han
first
shot first,
episode,
God damn it.
and he's constantly lying and worried about the dough and his own skin.
Yeah.
Vader does set the precedent. I mean, yeah, like so it wouldn't surprise me, and he's never struck me as a villain so much as a pirate. And
Yeah.
pirates, while not necessarily what I would call a good guy, aren't
They've got a
necessarily
code.
what I would call a bad guy either.
They've got a code of honor they stick to, right?
Right? Like Hondo.
Yeah.
Hondo, my joke last week. Hondo gets the letter from Mon Mothma exonerating him of his crimes, among which are kidnapping children.
Yeah.
Right?
As far as the emissary goes, West does question whether or not we're actually going to get one in the next episode.
Mm.
Will there be a real emissary that shows up? Possible suspects being General Leia Organa because she has ties to the Old Republic. Again, Chancellor Mon Mothma, or possibly Senator Hamato Ziono, or even General Armitage Hux.
Yeah.
Because that would, be something they could fund the First Order with, right?
I get why he's thinking like that, but I think we're so far gone from. That's a true statement. I do feel his dialogue, "I'm like you, I'm lost," was heartfelt, and it lends itself to the idea that he may have been an Order 66 survivor.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, coupled with the imagery of him holding, like, trauma begets trauma, he's holding the lightsaber very much like Anakin is at the kids. I feel like that scene is kind of like
a throwback to it,
right, and solidifies that to me.
Yeah,
but I feel like this the events, especially when we get that 200 years ago, blah blah blah, happened.
Yeah,
that
I don't think there is a current emissary.
I don't think there is a current emissary. I don't think that, or else there would have been like this Rogue One plan to find this place to fund the rebellion, because that would be easy. And if Mon Mothma, further to that, if Mon Mothma knew about it, it would have been super easy to beat the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
And right. I agree with that, Wes, but I also agree that because, well, I did it again. There we go. I also agree that you kind of know where Jod's coming from, because he's always been coming from different angles.
Mm-hmm. Wes says every time Hondo shows up, you don't know where he's coming from. Yeah. So one final thought on this week's episode. I know we mentioned last episode that the pirate Kona is played by Sissa Gray. But I think similar to the folks over at Hyundai, nobody did the research when it comes to the meaning behind the name.
Ooh.
Because although Kona means leeward in Hawaiian, which translates to west side for us land lovers, it does mean something completely different in Portuguese.
Okay.
So, way to go, Disney, for including the Portuguese slang for the C bomb.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Wow. I believe
that
she's a Hawaiian actress, and there's a city called Kona on the west side.
yeah,
So I think that's probably where it came from. But
more than
wow.
likely. But yeah,
Wow.
yep. So, with that, we have only more sleeps to wait until we get the finale.
Crazy. It's
Um,
like it's been.
it's been fast. It's been fun.
I hate to keep
It's been a
slagging on
great
that other
ride.
show, but it felt like it took 7 years to get through.
And this,
And this one,
it's
I'm
gone
like,
by fast.
I need 8 more. Why is
Yeah.
this only 8 episodes?
Yep. But we'll be back here Tuesday as Wes returns from parts unknown for the first
Nice.
random fandom of 2025.
Excellent.
And next Sunday, we'll be back here for episode 8 of our little review series, Fandom Crew.
The finale. I can't wait.
Mm-hmm. So thank you to everybody who tuned in live, everybody who's tuning in on the replay. Thank you. Don't forget to check out our merch site for some fun gear. And there's always Patreon too, if you feel so inclined.
All our
For
social medias where you
yeah,
can like
check
and
us out there,
subscribe and focus.
interact, and
Yeah, if you feel like Patreoning us, we have the $5 tier. We have one tier. You can see all our spelling mistakes and our fun things, and we're trying to cook something up cooler for, you know, maybe some exclusive videos in the year coming. What you got? What you got?
oh, thank you,
Oh,
Kay.
thanks, Kay. What's this, Wes?
I
Oh,
did.
we're gonna have to assign duties later. I'm at comms.
There we go. Wes says, but we've already talked about Project Cinder and how it may pertain to this, so who else shows up for the credits if not someone who needs to fund a budding first order?
Well, no, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point.
True. And
Which eliminates everybody but Hux from that
yeah,
equation. I would think.
yeah.
I still think that the level of surprise. I don't think we've seen as and the other thing is that we a bunch of half thoughts. Sorry, but the other thing is that we could be so far off the mark with Project Cinder,
Mm-hmm.
and it could literally have been generations of the fog of war, rather than like some sort of planetary devastation.
Mm-hmm. But like,
Certainly not weather machines.
no. But as far as that and staying secret, I don't think that's going to happen. Because like the beacon's been lit when they
Right.
stopped off to get directions from Kay the Owl. You know, the Republic guys were there, so
Right.
now this is in the wind. This
Yeah, that's
information
right.
is now traveling up the
Right.
line, right?
That's sort of public knowledge. You're going to
So
probably see Republic, New Republic frigates respond here.
yeah,
And then in order to level the balance of things too, then you almost really have to either destroy the world, which I kind of don't want to happen
mm-hmm.
for the sake of the kids, or you have to destroy the dataries or the mine or the refinery or the mint or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there is an emergency hull detonation sequencer for that too.
Yep. But that's all I got for tonight. So
Yeah, man, what a ride it's been, and there's one more
to go.
one more hill to get down before they kick us off. So I'm excited. Any predictions? It's really hard because they
I
keep
know,
coming at
like,
us with lefts and rights.
Unless Jod can deactivate the barrier, I mean, he's kind of outnumbered at this point, really.
Absolutely.
Because he's going to need his backup. Like he said, he needs the firepower of the frigate to take the mint, but we still don't know if, like on at Akron, are there ground level defenses just hidden in plain sight?
It's almost like it's less important that the money gets out and more important that the information doesn't get out.
Mm-hmm.
So him leaving with the information is more dangerous than him leaving with any amount of the money.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Maybe.
Project Cinder, Onyx Cinder.
I mean, I have said that it looks so much like a Sith scimitar that I could easily conceive of the last emissary having been a representative of Palpatine in the old Republic, but before the Galactic Civil War. Like, that's how we're going to fund building these droids. because you got to remember he was pulling the strings for both sides of that
Yeah,
battle.
long
And
before anybody even knew it was going on.
you do get the impression though when we delve into the politics of the world in the Clone Wars animated that there are planets starving to death because there are other planets that are being just ravaged for their
Resources
their
and whatever else they
resources,
have,
etc.
right?
So, I mean, it opens up a lot of political questions in the galaxy. I don't think we're going to get any answers, unfortunately, to
I
these
think
big questions. They're mouth watering as heck. This is a real mystery that I really enjoy. There's not a ton of loose ends to like sort of wrap up. It's mostly character driven stuff that we need to wrap up. The kids are back together with their parents. We need to stop Jod from escaping if that's sort of his intent. Um,
I think Jod is going to turn and try and help them based on the line at the beginning of this episode where the droids are like, "You will be stunned for your own safety." So
yeah,
I think the droids could potentially turn, if it is indeed a droid as the supervisor,
right.
and turn right on the population to stop the information from getting out,
Well,
right?
and that could be what it is. Is more of like Wes had said earlier on a Skynet situation.
Yes.
So, and that could be rather than a Project Cinder, Project Skynet kind of thing where they turn on the population and then therefore,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of questions. We're not going to get Brutus being the catalyst for any
No.
turnaround, that's for sure. And for the first time, maybe in my life, a dog gets put down in the middle of a show and I didn't tear up.
He was a mean dog. He was going
he
to
was
kill
a
Jod.
mean, he was a mean dog.
He
Yeah.
was a mean dog. But yeah. So
Awesome.
for Wes, whatever your thing is, fan on. And for us here, I'm Andy.
I'm Hank.
And we will catch you on the next one. So bye for now.
Pew, pew.